Do you really think it's viable to have a healthy gaming experience when you live in a region that consistently deals with delay that looks like this? I personally don't. What's going on, Jam Fam, and welcome back to the Gaming Station. So today we're going to be talking about something that I've had an issue with for a few months, but I've never really talked about other than on stream, and that subject is the removal of the Australian server and its effect on the Brawl Stars community over there. So if you didn't know, Brawl Stars set up an Australian server back in August of last year. However, Brawl Stars doesn't have the biggest player base over there from my understanding, so matchmaking times will become very long for players that grinded for a long period of time. This is because there's a matchmaking system that makes it so you can't face the same opponent more than once a day. So players who played for a longer period of time would cycle through a bigger portion of the player base and have to wait longer in matchmaking and possibly even end up in matches with low trophy players and even bots. With this in mind, the Brawl Stars team decided they would remove the Australian server back in February of this year. This would have the Australian and New Zealand players queue up in a larger player pool at the cost of higher latencies. So these players are supposed to queue up on the Singapore server now, which, while it does have higher latencies, are still within Brawl Stars' acceptable range, according to a tweet Frank sent out when announcing this news. Now, that clip at the beginning of this video was a tweet from The Life of TZ saying that it's been months since he's actually played on the Singapore server, and the game is almost unbearable to play. And from the looks of that clip and other tweets that I've seen from other Australian players, I have to agree. I personally think the removal of the server was a mistake in the long run. Sure, it remedies the matchmaking problems in the short term, but at the expense of having to deal with lag like that, I'm not sure it's worth it. After all, what's the point of queuing up a game if I'm not going to be able to land my shots because I'm going to have to deal with lag every single match? Now, for what it's worth, there was a Reddit post the other day titled, "Australian and New Zealand player base is dying." The user Hip Airplane made a post going over how people he used to play with are leaving the game, and he has genuine concerns about this. Frank actually did reply to this thread saying that the player base is actually recovering since the removal of the Australian servers. Now, this didn't sound right to me because I know if I personally had to deal with lag like this, I'd probably quit the game because certain brawlers would be 100% unplayable. And I think this user, 2 hours on a name, hit the nail on the head by saying that it's the lower trophy player base that's growing, while mid and upper ladder players are quitting because of the state of things. And to me, that makes sense because if you're just downloading the game and you have no idea about any of this, you're going to play the super low skill brawlers first. Shelly, Nita, Bull, stuff like that. And because of the nature of those brawlers, they're not affected by lag quite as much as a brawler like Colt, who's probably the highest skill cap that you get early on. So you'll be able to push past the bots and I'd imagine to about 400 trophies without much trouble at all. After that, I see it being very hard to win consistently for a new player, but not because the game's actually getting harder, but because they have to deal with such jank because of the server issue. So what do I think Brawl Stars should do? Well, I think they should 100% bring back the Australian servers, but to help remedy the matchmaking times in the short term, they should raise the cap that you can face other players to between 3 and 5 times per day. This would allow players to grind for a lot longer without churning out of the player pool so quickly. And yes, there's an argument that people will abuse matchmaking and win trade for higher trophy records, but we've already seen that done. In my opinion, that doesn't really matter at this point. Secondly, I think it's on Supercell to promote their game in Australian and New Zealand regions with ads and promotions and stuff like that. If they did some kind of giveaway like a skin or free gems to new and returning players, that would get people to come to the game quickly and help bolster their player pool. And while not all players would stick around for the long haul, some would, and that's the end goal after all, just to get people in and playing the game for a longer period of time. And the last thing I can think of is that Australia and New Zealand need real representation within the esports scene. Now, obviously, I'm not saying that Australia and New Zealand should be their own competitive region, but they could be grouped with a few other countries instead of all of Southeast Asia. Then, if a team from that region qualifies for monthly finals, then players from that region have a chance to see a team from their region competing, and it gives them a chance to connect to the game on a more competitive level, which would also help stir up hype for the game, and it snowballs into that. But what are your guys' thoughts on this subject? Let me know down in the comments. I'm interested to hear what you guys think about this subject, and if you guys have any other solutions that would help these players out. Also, again, shout out to Life of TZ for letting me use the clips from his Twitter. Give him a follow on Twitter and sub to his YouTube channel. Links are in the description below. Anyway, that's going to do it for this one. I want to thank you guys for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.